Alright, here we go, interview. Okay. Question. So, I would like to know how it all began. Could you please tell me how you started your musical journey as a musician and how Battlecross started as a band? So I started taking guitar lessons around the age of 12 or 13, and I was listening to bands. A lot of the alternative music is kind of like where I started. Bands like Nirvana, Green Day, Offspring, things like that. And I started going towards heavier stuff when I discovered like Marilyn Manson and Rage Against the Machine and Tool. So I wanted to learn guitar. I started taking lessons. And my guitar teacher just started teaching me guitar tabs and teaching me songs, or more or less parts of songs. So I didn't really learn any theory or anything. It was just trying to learn riffs from other bands I liked. And I started around the same time as Tony, the other guitar player at Battlecross. And we both kind of started at the same time, and we were both also kind of listening to the same music, getting into Metallica and things like that. And so we started jamming. Him and I would just go back and forth between where we lived and just bring our little practice amps and just play together and just try to just jam together. We really didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of trying to figure stuff out and just play. And then the band kind of started right after I left high school. He was still in high school, and we started jamming with some folks and some friends and stuff like that. And that's kind of where we started as a band, playing together. But Battlecross started initially around 2004, and we were a four-piece at the time. And Tony was doing vocals, and we had another bass player and drummer. The bass player was also doing vocals. And it was really more along the lines of like Metallica. That was kind of the style of the band. And so there was somewhat of an aggressive approach to the vocals, but it was more or less kind of singing style. Hetfield meets kind of like a, early Chuck Billy kind of style. I don't know. It was Tony had a unique. He could sing, but he was also putting aggression in his voice. And the bass player was more like James Hetfield. So yeah, we started as a four-piece. We played locally, playing at certain bars, playing with friends' bands and things like that, And from there, we played out a couple years, maybe a year and a half, I would say. Well, no, we did a couple recordings, demo recordings of, 3 songs. And then around 2006, we split ways with our bass player and drummer. And and then our original singer, Marshall, joined the band when we still had our old drummer. And we started kind of taking the approach of where Battlecross started to head, which was more aggressive. And then once we parted ways with our drummer, we got Mike in the band, the original drummer, Mike Krieger. And that was really where the sound of Battlecross all started. It was Mike and Marshall and Tony and myself. And then Mike Hugel joined the band as our bass player in about 2007, around that time. So that was like the beginning of Battlecross. Alright, next question. Is there a particular reason for you guys to choose Battlecross as a band name? There wasn't any really. I guess the only reason, we thought the name sounded cool. We were really trying to find a name that wasn't typical, that also no one was using. There were so many band names that were being used, and so we actually searched on the internet Battlecross, and there were no websites or anything that popped up with any band names that had that, or any bands that had that name. we just kind of felt it was sounded powerful and just straight to the point, something that people could remember. And you know, excuse me. Um, the rest was kind of history from there. You know, Tony kind of came up with the idea of the symbol, which later morphed into what it was, you know, the glyph. But you know, that was all kind of done in Microsoft Paint, messing around in there. So, how would you describe the sound of Battlecross to someone who hasn't heard your music? I guess the best way that I can put it is like melodic thrash death metal. More melodic thrash than death, but there is some elements of death metal in there. But yeah, I mean, I just think we've always just tried to take the elements of all these bands that we've loved and try to put those blend them together, take the best parts of what we like, and you know, we definitely have melody in there and a melodic side to it, but it's still very aggressive and you know, hard hitting, which I think is what we always wanted the band to be. It was very just like a high energy kind of a band where there wasn't any really ballads or anything like that. What was the appeal in thrash metal and melodic death metal for you? And it just comes across in the bands we listen to. Tony and I were obviously big Metallica, Pantera, you know, Slayer fans, and Testament, you know, all those old school thrash bands. And then, you know, Mike kind of brought in more of the death metal style to what he was listening to. He was listening to, you know, more of that style and a little bit of, and then, you know, Marshall kind of had the hardcore side to him, but he also, you know, he was into Pantera and stuff like that, Lamb of God. And Mike, our bass player, he was, you know, listening to old school thrash and things like that. So it was just a blend of all that stuff from like hardcore to, you know, we all listened to a variety of stuff, but all of that just kind of worked. It just worked. You know, that was what we were coming up with in the room. So, are you familiar with the Sri Lankan metal scene? If so, what are your favorite Sri Lankan metal bands or musicians? I'm not entirely familiar. I've had people hit me up from Sri Lanka on Facebook. I've seen bands pop up. Recently, I got turned on to a band called Genocide Shrines. I think those guys are really cool. Black and death metal kind of sound. But I'm not too familiar, so I couldn't really pinpoint too many bands or musicians. But I heard they have a pretty good metal scene. And I've heard other people kind of recommend some other death metal bands and things like that from there. So it's awesome to see that that's happening out there. What do you think takes the most amount of time to compose? Riffs, solos, drums? I don't know. It really just depends on the person, you know, who's coming up with an idea. I mean, it's lately because we're not, you know, we don't practice or rehearse weekly or anything like that. It's the writing process obviously goes slower, and then just with life happening in general. But I think when we were younger, I always think, in my opinion, a song kind of starts with the riff, you know, so usually starting there, and then it just, you know, it depends on how good that riff is, you know, for everyone else in the band to sort of build off of that. So, yeah, and it just depends how good your riff is, and then just the progress of everyone in the band and where their ideas kind of come up with. What do you think is the greatest achievement of Battlecross as a band so far? Um, I don't know. I'd say the highlights obviously would be playing Orion Fest with Metallica and having James Hetfield come out and introduce the band before we played on stage. I mean, it was just unreal that James Hetfield knew who we were, and for him to actually say Battlecross was pretty amazing. So definitely a career highlight. And then I think Mayhem Fest 2013, getting that opportunity to play in front of such an awesome crowd and being part of an awesome tour. And also the Five Finger Death Punch tour we did in 2012, it was a Trespass America tour with Five Finger Death Punch and Killswitch Engage and Trivium and God Forbid. That was just such a huge tour for us because we had already released our first album. You know, we were just one album in, and we were getting this opportunity. It was like our third tour, and we were getting to play arenas. I mean, that was huge. So I would say kind of those three things were some career highlights. Getting to play in Europe and South America were also huge, huge achievements. I mean, never did I ever think that, you know, music, you know, that was obviously always a dream, was that being able to travel places like that, and it was because of our music that brought us there. So those were huge achievements for us. What kind of a response have you had for your music locally or internationally? Locally, I mean, it's been great. I mean, we've been in the Michigan scene playing for years, so it was awesome to have the support that we did, you know, from starting out to when eventually, you know, getting signed and touring the world. You know, we've always had big Michigan support. Internationally, you know, surprising and playing in certain places in Germany and, you know, playing in like Mexico and Brazil, places that you'd never really been to, and people had already heard of you, or just, you know, respond so well to what you're doing. It's just very humbling. It's awesome to see really good crowd response in places you never played, you know, before. So, or in places that you're not from, you know. So it's obviously always humbling. Who would you say are your biggest musical influences as a musician or band? I mean, for guitar wise, it has to be, you know, Dimebag and James Hetfield and, you know, Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King, and, you know, they're just the guys from those bands that we listen to, like Metallica and Slayer, Pantera, and encompassing everybody. I mean, we all have our different, you know, influences and things like that. So I don't know. It's obviously kind of the main ones. I would just say, you know, the big metal bands are kind of obviously huge influences. There's obviously tons of other individual influences that we have from other bands that we like, and I've been a pretty big extreme metal fan, so, you know, I obviously listen to like Cannibal Corpse and Dying Fetus and Cephalic Carnage and Pig Destroyer and things like that to influence that side of me, which comes out in Battlecross as well. So, what are your top 5 metal albums released by other metal musicians? That's a tough one. Well, Far Beyond Driven by Pantera, I think, is, you know, number one for me. That was just such an impactful record to me. Slayer's Rain and Blood. What else? God, this is tough. Testament's The Gathering album. God, this is tough. I don't know, there's so many. It's hard to think of everything. Let's see, number 4. What would number 4 be? Oh, Lower Tyrant's Kingdom of Might. Yeah, that was a huge, impactful record on me during my time, you know, when Battlecross was a band, hearing that band play, seeing them live and hearing that record. And what else? I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a blank here, so I'm going to move on. What are your thoughts about elitism in metal, and how has it affected you as a metal musician? It really, I don't know. You know, at this point, it doesn't bother me. I think it sucks, and it's really just, I think it's negative to the impact of our music. Like, why be closed-minded about, you know, obviously everyone has their genres and things that they like, but when it turns into, you know, hate towards other bands and bringing other bands down because they're not within your genre. I think that's just ridiculous. Um, you know, metal as a whole, it's already a shunned community from in general. It's the music that most people look down upon, so we already feel like outsiders, but then to make other people feel like outsiders within our own community is just like, why would you do that? I don't know. I think I don't like it and I don't participate in it. Obviously, there's genres and things that I don't listen to, but I'm not going to throw hate at somebody because they like it. In fact, I love doing shows or being a part of shows where there's a mixed genre of bands. I think that that's how you pull in new audiences, and that's, to me, the more diverse the better, you know. So I welcome that, and it hasn't affected me personally. Like, we're gonna keep doing what we do as a band, and people like it, cool. If people don't, then oh well. You know, you can't please everybody. So, are you involved in any side projects apart from Battlecross? If so, what are they? Yes, I have uh, another metal band, death metal band. It's called Portal of Pazuzu, and I've been jamming with those guys for about 2 years now. And we're about ready to record and do our first album, but I love playing with those guys. I love playing the music that they're writing. So it's awesome to be a part of that, and it's nice to see something different from Battlecross. So yeah, I love it. Portal of Pazuzu, check it out. The latest full-length album, Battlecross: Rise to Power, was released back in 2015. When are you guys planning to release the next studio album of the band? We don't know yet. That is what we're trying to work on at the moment. We have some set writing time coming up, so trying to get together in a room and start, you know, hashing out some ideas and things like that. So I'm hoping at least by the end of the year we'll be ready to record. So hopefully sooner, obviously, but I don't want to rush anything. So maybe by next year, we'll see. What are your thoughts about the popular music trend in USA? You know, it doesn't bother me. People, obviously, there's things that are marketed towards that obviously have more popularity than other genre types. It's always going to be that way. Pop music and all that stuff is just always going to exist and always be out there. And I don't listen to it. It's not my thing, but, you know, to me, good music is good music. If I hear something that I like, I'll listen to it. But, you know, I don't really have an elitist attitude towards music. You know, I like what I like, and I try to listen to everything that I like. So, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I don't really care. What would you like to say to the folks that are visiting my YouTube channel? Check out Battlecross, and check out my other band, Portal of Pazuzu. And we have, you know, look out for Battlecross. Just keep an eye out, because we're going to have some new stuff coming out. We're not dead, so keep an eye out. Will you be interested in performing in Sri Lanka? Because bands like As I Lay Dying, Riding Christ, Demonic Resurrection, etc. have done so. Of course, we'd love to play Sri Lanka. Obviously, it's just got to be the right circumstance. It's, you know, expensive to travel, and, you know, we have to make sure accommodations and things like that are taken care of. But if we find the right promoter that gets in touch with our booking agent, of course, yeah, we'll be there in a heartbeat. We'd love to. Thank you for the interview, and thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. Thank you.